In a dramatic escalation that has captured global attention, tensions between the United States and Iran have entered a new and highly volatile phase. Former President Donald Trump has once again taken a firm and uncompromising stance, warning that if ongoing negotiations fail to produce a meaningful outcome, he would not hesitate to authorize aggressive action targeting Iran's critical oil and energy infrastructure. This statement has sent shockwaves through international markets, triggering sharp fluctuations in oil prices and causing uncertainty across major stock indexes. Analysts are closely watching every development, as the situation is no longer just a political standoff. It has rapidly evolved into a high-stakes geopolitical and economic confrontation with global consequences. Meanwhile, reports emerging from Tehran describe a series of powerful explosions across multiple areas of the city. Israeli military officials have claimed responsibility for a new wave of targeted operations, though they have not disclosed specific details regarding the objectives. Local sources indicate significant damage in certain districts, with fires and heavy smoke visible in the aftermath. While the full extent of the impact is still being assessed, the intensity and frequency of these incidents suggest a calculated effort aimed at weakening strategic capabilities. The developments have heightened fears among civilians and raised serious concerns about the possibility of further escalation in an already fragile region. At the same time, Iran is considering a move that could have far-reaching implications for global trade and energy supply. A parliamentary committee has approved a proposal to impose transit fees on vessels passing through the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical shipping lanes for oil. In addition, the proposal includes restrictions on certain foreign vessels, signaling a potential shift in how Iran manages one of its most strategically important waterways. If implemented, this measure could disrupt international shipping routes and significantly impact global energy markets, further intensifying the economic ripple effects of the conflict. Back in Washington, internal challenges are adding another layer of complexity to the situation. Lawmakers have yet to reach an agreement to reopen parts of the Department of Homeland Security, leaving key agencies, including those responsible for cybersecurity, temporarily inactive. This comes at a time when digital threats are on the rise, and experts warn that vulnerabilities in national infrastructure could be exploited. The timing has raised concerns among security analysts, who argue that maintaining operational readiness is crucial during periods of heightened international tension. Adding to the evolving narrative, the White House has hinted at the possibility of involving allied nations in sharing the financial burden associated with the conflict. Officials suggest that discussions may soon include proposals for regional partners, particularly in the Middle East, to contribute support. This approach, if pursued, could reshape diplomatic relationships and alter the balance of influence across the region. It reflects a broader strategy that extends beyond immediate military or security considerations and into long-term geopolitical positioning. Taken together, these developments paint a picture of a rapidly intensifying situation where every decision carries significant consequences. The world is watching closely as leaders weigh their options, markets react in real time, and uncertainty continues to grow. Whether diplomatic efforts can successfully defuse the tension or the situation moves toward a deeper crisis remains unclear. What is certain, however, is that the coming days will be critical in shaping the direction of this unfolding global story. As the conflict continues to unfold, a deeply concerning dimension has emerged involving strikes on academic and research institutions within Iran, raising alarm across the international community. Iranian officials have strongly criticized what they describe as deliberate targeting of universities, claiming that multiple campuses and student facilities have been impacted over the past several weeks. According to local reports, nearly 20 educational institutions, including dormitories and specialized research centers, have suffered damage, with some buildings reportedly reduced to rubble. These incidents have intensified the narrative that the conflict is expanding beyond conventional strategic targets and entering areas that directly affect civilian life and intellectual infrastructure. Iran's leadership has responded with sharp rhetoric, emphasizing that knowledge and education cannot be silenced through force. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi issued a strong statement condemning the attacks, suggesting that such actions only reinforce Iran's resolve rather than weaken it. While the United States has not directly commented on specific incidents, Iranian officials continue to frame the situation as part of a broader coordinated effort involving multiple actors. This messaging reflects an attempt to shape both domestic and international perception, portraying the country as a victim of unjustified aggression while rallying internal unity during a time of crisis. The situation has also triggered warnings from Iran's Revolutionary Guard, which has advised individuals associated with American institutions in the region to maintain distance from certain facilities for their own safety. While no direct actions have followed these warnings, the language has contributed to a growing sense of unease across neighboring countries. Several international universities operating in the Middle East have responded by shifting to remote learning models, prioritizing the safety of students and staff. Among them, American University of Beirut announced temporary suspension of in-person activities, citing precautionary measures despite no confirmed immediate threats. In Iraq's Kurdistan region, authorities have taken even broader steps by closing not only international universities, but also local schools, signaling how seriously the perceived risks are being treated. This widespread disruption to education highlights the far-reaching consequences of the conflict, extending well beyond military and political arenas into the everyday lives of civilians. Students, educators, and families are now navigating uncertainty as academic progress is interrupted and institutions adapt to rapidly changing security conditions. Adding further complexity, some of the affected universities were reportedly sites of recent protests prior to the escalation of tensions. This detail introduces an additional layer to the situation, suggesting that the conflict may intersect with internal dynamics and pre-existing societal pressures. Observers note that such factors can influence how events are interpreted both the country and on the global stage, potentially shaping narratives around legitimacy, resistance, and public sentiment. Meanwhile, Israel has defended at least one of its operations by claiming that a targeted university facility was being used for advanced research with potential military applications. According to its statements, the site allegedly included specialized equipment and laboratories linked to strategic development programs. While such claims are difficult to independently verify, they underscore the broader challenge of distinguishing between civilian and dual-use infrastructure in modern conflicts. This ambiguity continues to fuel debate among international observers, legal experts, and policymakers about proportionality, accountability, and the evolving nature of warfare in highly interconnected environments. As the conflict intensifies, its impact on global energy markets has become impossible to ignore, sending ripples through economies far beyond the immediate region. One of the most closely watched indicators, Brent crude, surged dramatically, briefly crossing the $116 per barrel mark before experiencing a slight pullback during midday trading. Despite this dip, prices remain significantly elevated, more than 50% higher than levels seen before the crisis began. This sharp increase reflects growing fears about supply disruptions, particularly as tensions center around key routes and infrastructure. For consumers and businesses alike, the effects are already being felt through rising fuel costs and increased uncertainty about long-term energy stability. At the heart of these concerns lies the strategic importance of the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow yet vital corridor through which a substantial portion of the world's oil supply passes every day. Any potential restrictions or new policies affecting this route could have immediate and far-reaching consequences. Iran's consideration of imposing transit fees or limiting access to certain vessels has added another layer of unpredictability to an already fragile situation. Energy analysts warn that even the perception of risk in this can trigger market volatility, as traders react swiftly to any sign of disruption. The result is a highly sensitive environment where prices can swing dramatically based on political statements as much as actual events on the ground. Meanwhile, financial markets are struggling to maintain stability amid the uncertainty. The S&P 500 managed a modest gain after enduring several consecutive weeks of decline, but overall sentiment remains cautious. Investors are weighing multiple factors simultaneously: geopolitical tension, inflation concerns, and the potential for broader economic fallout. For many, the current climate feels reminiscent of past periods of instability, where external shocks quickly translated into market corrections. The challenge now lies in determining whether the situation will stabilize through diplomatic efforts or continue to escalate, placing further pressure on global financial systems. Beyond the numbers, the dimension of the crisis is becoming increasingly evident. In Lebanon, ongoing air operations have caused widespread destruction in densely populated areas, with reports indicating that over 1,000 people have lost their lives and many more have been displaced. The scale of displacement has created urgent humanitarian needs, stretching local resources and prompting calls for international assistance. Entire neighborhoods have been affected, leaving families without homes and communities struggling to recover amid continued uncertainty. These developments serve as a stark reminder that behind every headline and statistic are real lives being profoundly impacted. Military officials have stated that targeted structures were believed to be associated with organized groups involved in cross-border activities. However, the sheer extent of the damage has raised difficult questions about proportionality and the protection of civilian areas. Images emerging from affected regions show significant structural loss, reinforcing concerns about the broader consequences of sustained operations in urban environments. Humanitarian organizations continue to monitor the situation closely, urging restraint and emphasizing the need to prioritize civilian safety. Taken together, the economic shocks and humanitarian challenges are converging into a complex global crisis that extends far beyond its of origin. Governments, institutions, and individuals alike are being forced to adapt in real time as conditions evolve. Whether through rising fuel prices, market instability, or the human toll of displacement, the effects of this conflict are being felt on multiple levels. As the world watches closely, the question remains whether coordinated international efforts can bring stability, or if the situation will continue to spiral into deeper uncertainty. As the crisis deepens, attention is increasingly shifting toward the digital battlefield, where unseen threats carry the potential to cause disruption on a massive scale. In the United States, concerns are mounting over the temporary shutdown of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, commonly known as CISA, a key body responsible for protecting national infrastructure against cyber risks. This development comes at a particularly sensitive time, as experts warn that geopolitical conflicts often spill into cyberspace, targeting critical systems such as energy grids, financial networks, and communication platforms. The absence of a fully operational defense structure has raised alarms among security professionals, who emphasize that vulnerabilities could be exploited when vigilance is most needed. Officials within Washington have acknowledged the seriousness of the situation, noting that adversaries do not pause their activities simply because of internal political gridlock. The shutdown stems from a broader legislative deadlock affecting parts of the Department of Homeland Security, leaving certain agencies without the resources required to function effectively. Analysts argue that this kind of institutional disruption can create openings for sophisticated cyber operations, which are often designed to remain undetected until significant damage has already been done. In an era where digital infrastructure underpins nearly every aspect of modern life, even a brief lapse in coordinated defense can have far-reaching consequences. At the same time, intelligence communities are closely monitoring potential cyber activity linked to rising tensions in the Middle East. Historically, periods of conflict have been accompanied by an increase in cyber incidents, ranging from data breaches to attempts at disrupting essential services. While there is no confirmed large-scale attack at this moment, the heightened alert level reflects a proactive approach aimed at anticipating possible threats. Security experts stress that preparation and resilience are key, particularly when dealing with actors capable of launching complex and coordinated operations across multiple domains. Adding to the strategic landscape, discussions within the White House suggest a broader approach to managing the financial burden of the ongoing conflict. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt indicated that there is interest in exploring ways for allied nations, particularly in the Middle East, to contribute support. This idea, while still in early stages, highlights a shift towards shared responsibility among regional partners. If implemented, it could redefine alliances and introduce new dynamics into an already geopolitical environment, where economic cooperation becomes as critical as military coordination. This evolving strategy also reflects a recognition that modern conflicts extend beyond traditional battlefields. Economic pressure, technological capability, and diplomatic influence all play crucial roles in shaping outcomes. By engaging allies in financial and strategic support, the United States may be aiming to distribute both the costs and the risks associated with prolonged instability. However, such moves can also introduce new challenges as differing national interests and priorities come into play. Ultimately, the convergence of cyber vulnerabilities, political uncertainty, and shifting alliances underscores the complexity of the current moment. What makes this situation particularly significant is not just the intensity of individual developments, but the way they intersect and amplify one another. As governments navigate this intricate landscape, the importance of coordination, preparedness, and clear communication has never been greater. The coming days will likely reveal whether these challenges can be managed effectively or whether new pressures will continue to emerge in unexpected ways. As the conflict stretches into its second month, the humanitarian and social consequences are becoming more visible and far more difficult to contain. Across multiple affected by ongoing military activity, large segments of the civilian population are facing displacement, uncertainty, and disruption to their daily lives. In Lebanon, particularly around Beirut and its surrounding districts, the scale of destruction has forced hundreds of thousands of people to leave their homes in search of safety. According to local authorities, the number of displaced individuals has crossed into the millions, creating one of the most significant humanitarian challenges in the region in recent years. Families are now relying on temporary shelters, community support systems, and international aid as essential services struggle to keep up with the growing demand. The destruction of residential and urban infrastructure has compounded the crisis, leaving entire neighborhoods unrecognizable. Buildings that once housed families, businesses, and schools now stand damaged or completely collapsed, highlighting the ongoing operations. Military statements have indicated that certain structures were believed to be associated with organized armed groups, including Hezbollah. However, the dense nature of urban environments means that civilian areas are often caught in the overlap, raising serious concerns among humanitarian observers. The situation underscores the difficulty of conducting targeted operations in populated regions without broader consequences for non-combatants. In parallel, the psychological impact on civilians is becoming increasingly evident. Constant uncertainty, the sound of explosions, and the fear of further escalation are taking a toll on mental health, particularly among children and vulnerable populations. Aid organizations report rising levels of stress and trauma as families attempt to cope with the sudden loss of stability. Schools remain closed in several areas, and access to healthcare services has been disrupted, making it harder for communities to recover or maintain a sense of normalcy. These factors contribute to a long-term challenge that extends beyond immediate physical damage. International organizations have begun to respond, calling for increased humanitarian access and emphasizing the importance of protecting civilian populations. Relief efforts are being mobilized, but logistical challenges and security concerns continue to limit their reach. The for coordinated global assistance is growing as local systems become overwhelmed. Experts warn that without sustained support, the humanitarian situation could deteriorate further, leading to deeper regional instability and prolonged recovery efforts. At the diplomatic level, calls for restraint and dialogue are intensifying. Multiple countries and global institutions are urging all parties involved to consider pathways toward de-escalation, emphasizing that continued escalation will only deepen the crisis. While official negotiations remain uncertain, there is a growing recognition that a purely force-driven approach may not lead to a sustainable resolution. The challenge lies in balancing immediate security concerns with the long-term goal of stability and peace. All of these elements together paint a sobering picture of a conflict whose impact extends far beyond strategic objectives. It is no longer just about territory, influence, or power. It is about people, communities, and of an entire region. As the world continues to watch and respond, the urgency of finding a path forward becomes more critical with each passing day. The question now is not only how the conflict will evolve, but how its lasting effects will shape the region for years to come. As the world stands at a critical crossroads, the unfolding situation between the United States, Iran, and regional actors is no longer just another geopolitical headline. It has become a defining moment that could reshape global power dynamics for years to come. What began as a series of strategic moves and calculated responses has now evolved into a complex, multi-layered crisis involving military pressure, economic uncertainty, cyber vulnerability, and humanitarian strain. Leaders across the globe are closely monitoring every development, aware that even a single miscalculation could trigger consequences far beyond affecting international stability on an unprecedented scale. At the center of this is Donald Trump, whose renewed warnings about targeting Iran's energy infrastructure have added a sense of urgency to already fragile diplomatic efforts. His stance reflects a broader approach rooted in pressure and leverage, aiming to force outcomes through strength rather than prolonged negotiation. However, history has shown that such strategies often carry unpredictable risks, especially when multiple with competing interests are involved. The challenge now lies in whether firm rhetoric can translate into controlled outcomes or whether it will accelerate the pace of escalation. Simultaneously, Iran's responses, ranging from policy proposals affecting vital trade routes to strong public messaging, signal that it is prepared to assert its position both regionally and internationally. The possibility of restrictions around key corridors like the Strait of Hormuz continues to loom large, keeping energy markets and global supply chains on edge. Each statement, each movement, and each decision is being analyzed in real time by governments, investors, and security experts alike, all trying to anticipate what comes next in an environment defined by uncertainty. What makes this moment particularly significant is the way different dimensions of the crisis are converging. Military actions are influencing markets, political decisions are affecting cybersecurity readiness, and humanitarian challenges are shaping global opinion. This interconnected nature means that no single event exists in isolation. Every development feeds into a larger narrative that is constantly evolving. Institutions, alliances, and even long-standing policies are being tested under pressure, forcing leaders to adapt quickly or risk falling behind the curve. Despite the intensity of the situation, there remains a window, however narrow, for diplomacy and de-escalation. Behind the scenes, efforts are likely underway to find common ground, reduce tensions, and prevent further deterioration. The coming days will be crucial in determining whether those efforts gain traction or are overshadowed by continued escalation. For now, the world watches with cautious anticipation, aware that the stakes have rarely been higher. In the end, this is more than just a conflict, it is a moment for international relations in the modern era. It will test not only the strength of nations, but the resilience of global systems designed to maintain balance and prevent chaos. As events continue to unfold, one thing remains clear: the decisions made today will echo far into the future, shaping not just the outcome of this crisis, but the direction of global stability itself.